When a young family moves into a spacious century home in rural Arkansas, they think they've gotten a deal of a lifetime.
The fireplace was all boarded up, and there was spray painted on the boards was like a pentagram. And there were bits of candles. Looked like they had a seance or something in that room.
Jaimie would unexpectedly meet someone who once lived at her house.
And she said, I lived there when I was a kid. And I was like, really? And she said, yeah, it's haunted.
She also explained that in the 1800s, a boy had fallen to his death out of one of the second-story windows.
There was an old Confederate cemetery that was about 100 yards behind the house.
Tragedy would strike after picking her children up from school.
They were doing construction on the road at the time, and one of the barrels was out of place. And so I went to like dodge it, and I just overcorrected, and we ended up flipping several times. Sometime in that process, Tori was ejected from the van, and the van rolled over on top of her, and she was pinned.
In October 2003, Jaimie and Ben Shea began searching for a larger home to raise their growing family.
We had 3 kids. Tori was the oldest. She was around 10, I believe. Bridger is our middle. He was around 5. And then we had Jackson, who was around 8 months old. We were just kind of looking to find a bigger place, something a little nicer with more room and a big yard and lots of land.
After having little luck searching, Jaimie would be informed about a historical property located in her hometown of Lamar, a small city situated in the Arkansas River Valley.
I have always been interested in old historical houses, and specifically the colonial style houses with the big front porch. And my aunt actually told me about this place.
With some parts of the house being constructed in the late 1700s. It's known to be one of the oldest private residences in the state.
I was like, let's go check it out. And it wasn't even on the market, I don't think officially yet. So we kind of had first dibs at it. And I loved the front porch and all the land and the old buildings that were on the property and the big giant trees. It was just everything I had thought of when I thought of raising a family. And it had a lot of character because it was built in the 1800s and 1700s, some of it. So it was just the history, I think, is what drew me to the house.
Although the house had been vacant for some time, the price was considerably lower than similar homes in the area. And it was exactly what Jaimie had envisioned for her family.
I think, I could be wrong, it was sometime in the late 1700s, was etched on the inside of the fireplace in the kitchen. And then on the outside of the fireplace on the other side of the house, which would be like the living room up to the upstairs bedroom, at the very top, it said 1811 was etched into that. And I feel like the only people in that area at that time was like a handful of French trappers. Like, it was not very inhabited. So I don't know how, I don't know what the original reason for the house being built, because there really wasn't many people in that area.
While walking through the house, Jaimie and Ben would make an unsettling discovery in one of the upstairs bedrooms.
When we first looked at the house, we did our walkthrough and it was very charming. And we went up the stairs, and the last bedroom we looked at was kind of shocking because we walked in and the fireplace was all boarded up, and there was spray painted on the boards was like a pentagram, and there were bits of candles and all kinds of weird, looked like they had a seance or something in that room. On the board, so not only was there a pentagram, but there was also a name of a boy that had actually died. And someone had written his name, full name, first and last name, in spray paint on the boards. So, I mean, it was kind of shocking to see that, but we just wrote it off as, okay, kids broke in, they're doing their thing, you know, playing around. At that time, I didn't really give it a whole lot of thought, and it definitely wasn't a deterrent for buying the house.
The Sheas remained enthusiastic about the house and believed a deal this good only comes once in a lifetime. Her husband, Ben, worked nights as a nurse at a nearby factory, while also going to school for a degree in theater.
He was also attracted to the space and the big trees in the yard, and also just the character of it being in such an old historic place. It just had a lot of charm, and we were both very attracted to just the fireplaces. I mean, what house has 4 fireplaces, you know? It was amazing. The price was right. It was beautiful. It had a lot of history. I was sold.
After settling into their new home, the family quickly falls into a busy routine. With their hectic work schedules, the couple hires a family friend to watch 8-month-old Jackson during the weekdays until Jaimie arrives back home.
It was a friend of mine. Her name is Desta, and she also worked with me. We did some creative projects together, and she volunteered to come and take care of the baby because the other 2 were in school while Ben slept, so that he could come home from work at 7, sleep a few hours, and then go to class. While he was a nurse, he was also going to school for theater.
Shortly after moving in, Jaimie hosts a yard sale to try and sell anything her family doesn't need anymore.
So another thing that happened was when we first moved into the house, we had a big garage sale, where's a yard sale, to get rid of some stuff. And I was just sitting on the porch, and this lady came up, and she was just kind of looking around and, you know, looking at the porch, and she put her hand on the railing and was just like, there are a lot of spirits in this house. She's like, there's a lot of energy going on here. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I can just tell there's a lot of spirits in this house. She's like, I can feel it. And that freaked me out for sure.
The interaction came off as strange, but Jaimie didn't initially put too much thought into it, as there were several Confederate grave markers from the 1800s, only 100 yards behind her property.
It's a Confederate cemetery. I did check out the graves and took out like some big etching paper and etched some of the stones. They were so old and worn out, you couldn't always read, what is said unless you did the charcoal and etched over it. There was a driveway too on the backside of the house that would lead to the cemetery.
Ben would follow his usual routine of sleeping for a few hours before getting ready for class. His short rest would be interrupted by the sound of crying coming through the baby monitor.
And he kept hearing the baby crying, and we had Desta there to take care of the baby so that he could sleep. And he was frustrated because he was like, why is she not picking up Jackson? He's crying.
When the crying wouldn't stop, Ben went upstairs to check on his son.
And so he ended up getting up himself and going upstairs, and there was no one there. Desta had taken Jackson out so that he could sleep. And the baby monitor had crying and it woke him up. And then he went up there and there was no baby.
Unsure what to make of it, Ben keeps the strange incident to himself. A few nights later, 8-year-old Bridger also noticed unusual activity.
Bridger pretty much from the very beginning, I would say within a few months of moving into the house, started saying that he was having a hard time sleeping. He would want to come down and sleep with us, and he never really did that when we lived in other places, so we thought it was kind of odd.
When this became a common occurrence, Jaimie and Ben decided to question their son further.
We finally asked him, why are you scared? And are you scared you don't like your new room? We would try to, pick his brain. And finally he said that he kept hearing people talking. And I said, who? Is Tori on her phone? Or, I tried to question him. And he said, no, it just sounds like a bunch of people talking over each other. He's like, a bunch of people talking all over each other. And I can't understand what they're saying. I remember just saying, sometimes, these old houses, they make weird noises and, the windows aren't that thick. Maybe you're hearing the neighbors talking. We'll check it out. Also, I thought he might have just been dreaming. And so I was like, sometimes, you dream things and they seem real. And I would try to just, calm him down and make him relax. And a lot of times he just ended up sleeping in our room because he didn't really like to sleep up in his room.
Whatever was lurking in their new home continued to make its presence known during the night.
We heard knocking on the wall right behind us, and it sounded like not just knocking, but it sounded like someone was pounding on the wall. And it would start with just like one, and then it would kind of startle us, settle back in to sleep, and then it would be like 2 loud knocks, and then 3 loud knocks. We were like, what is that? Because it wasn't a creak, it wasn't something shifting. It sounded like literally a fist on the wall right above our heads.
Although they find the experience odd, Jaimie and Ben believe there must be a rational explanation for the bizarre knocking.
It's an old house, it has a lot of sounds, there's probably a lot of settling of the foundation. I would try to come up with anything else besides it being something paranormal.
Trick or treat! Good house is across the street, man.
Thank you.
I got dots. You got
dots?
Halloween came and went. It had been 2 months since the Shea family moved into their new home. Around the same time, while going to get groceries, Jaimie has an unexpected encounter with a woman who claimed to have grown up in her house.
I was going shopping just at the local Walmart, and when I walked in the door, the greeter that happened to be working that day said, "Hey, are you Jaimie?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Do you live in that house in Lamar?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "My family used to live in that house. I lived there when I was a kid." And I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, it's haunted." And I said, "Oh." And this is when we first moved in. So this was brand new. And this is we had maybe heard the knocking on the wall at that point.
The greeter also explained that sometime in the 1800s, a young boy had tragically fallen to his death out of one of the house's second-story windows.
She said that was a story that was passed on from her family. So I guess her family had owned the house for several years. For, years and years, she had grown up there. And that was just something that was a story that was passed on to her, that a boy had fallen out of the window in the upstairs. It was the window of the room that was Bridger's room. It kind of took me back to just be called out as I was walking into the grocery store. But she made a point to say that place is haunted. I experienced a lot of things, and I didn't pick her brain too much at that time because I was trying to get in and get my groceries and get out. But I did take her number, and then I ended up losing it because I wanted to ask her questions later.
Weeks would turn to months, with no activity to speak of in the Shea household.
There were times where everything would seem normal for a few months at a time.
The family became more comfortable in their new home and began to feel better about the move. The peaceful days spent in the house would soon end, when Ben and Jaimie's worst nightmare would become a reality.
I would take some of my work home from time to time, and so that way I could pick the kids up from school, and sometimes I would leave the office early and take my work, and after the kids went to bed I would finish up, and so I would be on the computer. I'd be working and I'd hear footsteps on the stairs, and so I would think one of the kids were up. The same thing happened to Ben. When he would be there by himself, he would think one of the kids was up, and he would, say, "Hey, you're supposed to be sleeping, go back to bed." And then we would go and check, and everybody's asleep. So the footsteps definitely were not any of our kids walking up and down the stairs.
Only a few nights later, Jaimie and Ben would once again be startled by unfamiliar sounds.
She shops. I've never seen anyone spend money the way she does. She spends it like like there's...
We aren't even capable of discerning the difference between right...
Break out. 1-1 to Osmus. Breaking ball down and away. Astros hitters laying off those breaking balls down that induce primarily the ground balls that Suppan is looking for.
Well, there's no question that both of these teams know exactly what the pitchers are going to try to do. There are no secrets at this point.
We'd be watching TV, and behind us we could hear the stair, something bouncing down the stairs, and it sounded like a rubber ball, and he would report hearing the same thing. He basically described it the same way I did. Boom, 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 boom. And you would hear that. So it sounded like somebody rolled a ball from the top of the stairs down the stairs. And this all pretty much happened simultaneously. So when it was active, all of these things were going on. We kind of all kind of kept our stories to ourselves. I probably was more vocal about it just because of experiencing things when I was younger, and it kind of was, reminding me of things that had happened when I was younger.
But she cannot fight the feeling that there is something more sinister lurking in their home.
I think he kind of humored me, but at the same time would come up with, well, it's an old house that makes all kinds of noises. It could be the foundation settling, or he would try to comfort me and make it something other than paranormal.
For Jaimie, the feeling was hard to shake, especially when the couple's 5-year-old son, Bridger, once again reported unusual activity in his bedroom.
It was really hard to get Bridger to sleep in his room. He was really scared of that room. And he would pretty much on every night report hearing voices, or his toys would go off without, while he was sleeping and make noise. And He had all kinds of reports all the time. It seemed like Bridger was the main, maybe it was his room or they were attracted to him for some reason, but he went through the most, I think, of anyone in the house. I feel like things kind of progressed. Like it started off with just like the knocking and then the lights. Like we could not keep a light bulb burning in the hallway that was leading. It was the hallway that had the fireplace with all the, like the pentagram and all that stuff when we first moved in. The hallway leading to that room, we had a lot of trouble. We couldn't keep a light bulb burning no matter what we did. We had an electrician come and look at it, and he says, everything seems fine. I don't have an explanation for you. Bridger would be scared to walk down that hallway, and so we ended up getting those touch lamps that are battery operated, and we just stuck them to the wall, and that way he could just kind of touch them on his way down the hall to give him some light. We couldn't keep batteries in them. They would only last for like maybe an hour and then they would burn out.
The couple's oldest child, Tori, would also become afraid of the house.
Tori started hearing Bridger's toys. Just it sounded like he was playing with his toys in his room. And so she would go in there and be like, knock it off. You're too loud. I'm trying to sleep. And then she would realize he wasn't even in there or thought he was hiding from her when she opened the door. And in fact, he was in our room sleeping with us.
The unexplainable phenomena occurring inside their home began to take a mental and physical toll on Jaimie and her family.
I never felt like we were in danger, but it was just unnerving. There was always that sense of, I don't know, they're keeping my kids up, like they're not getting sleep, I'm not getting sleep. And so we were always exhausted, and I felt like that made everybody a little more irritable. And, so I feel like it was affecting us, our, health, our mental health, our physical health.
Jaimie decided to see if the woman she met at the grocery store would have any more information that could possibly help her.
I just wanted to ask her more questions about it after things had started happening to us. Because when I ran into her, it was very early on. We had experienced little to no, paranormal activity at that time. And so when things started happening, I was like, I gotta talk to this lady and find out what she experienced. She had given me her number and I lost it. And so I went back and I was like, well, she works at Walmart. I'll just go see if I can find her. And I asked and they said she didn't work there anymore. And I couldn't remember her name. I had no idea how to find her again.
Jaimie would soon reach her breaking point when she has a terrifying interaction with her 5-year-old son, Bridger.
She was actually with me when the scariest thing that happened in that house happened. So we were working on something on the computer. We were sitting side by side. It was a desktop. So we both had our chairs pulled up. We were working on the computer, and then whatever was on the monitor, it looked like something walked behind us. And we both were like, did you see that? And we looked kind of over our shoulder. We didn't know if it was a shadow or a reflection or what, but because of all the other things that had happened in that house, it seemed like it was something behind us we didn't know. We were working on the computer. It was kind of probably around 8 or 9 at night, and Bridger comes down the stairs, and he just kept staring like he was in a trance. And so I was like, Bridger, are you sleepwalking? And he just started laughing, like this, not his laugh, like the scariest laugh I've ever heard. Just laughing, and got right up in my face and just was laughing and laughing and laughing. And I couldn't snap him out of it. So finally I kind of, like shook him a little bit. I'm like, Bridger, wake up. But our dog ran up the stairs as fast as it could, barking into Bridger's room, jumped on Bridger's bed, went to the corner of his bed, like that was against the wall, and started just barking like he had something cornered on Bridger's bed. So we ran up after the dog to see what was going on. And then when we came back down the stairs, the dog's leash was on the stairs. And before that, it was hanging up on a hook. So that was by far the scariest thing that I'd seen, because I thought my son was possessed at that point in time.
Jaimie is now convinced her house is haunted and begins searching for someone who can help her family.
I was like, there's no way I can explain this away. We'd already had the balls, the sound of the ball bouncing down the stairs. We've had footsteps. We've had doors slamming. Any of that could be explained away by wind or, old house. But at that point, I was like, no, there's something not right.
Around this time, Jaimie wrote an article for the local newspaper describing the weird things that had been happening in her home. It wasn't long after when the Central Arkansas Society for Paranormal Research saw the article and decided to contact Jaimie. They agree on a date and time the paranormal team could come out to the house later that month. But little did the Shea family know that tragedy was right around the corner.
I had picked up the kids from school. We had a minivan, and both of the boys were buckled in. They had their, one had their half car seat, one had the full car seat in the very, very back. Tori was sitting up front, and I had just picked her up from school. We were heading home. It was only about maybe a 3-mile drive, like from one exit to the next, to go home. But they were doing construction on the road at the time, and one of the barrels was out of place. And so it was kind of in the middle of the road, in the middle of the lane. And so I went to like dodge it, and I just overcorrected, and we ended up flipping several times, rolled up the embankment. We went completely head over heels. Sometime in that process, Tori was ejected from the van, and the van rolled over on top of her, and she was pinned underneath the van. I didn't know where she was, because when there was glass everywhere. We were all, I was all scraped up, and I looked over and she wasn't in her seat. And so then I checked, and Bridger and Jackson were still buckled in, hanging upside down, because the van was upside down. I couldn't find Tori, and another car, some lady was running like full speed towards me and said, "There's someone underneath the van."
General Hospital, General Hospital. This is Medic 5 currently inbound to your facility, ETA of about 10 minutes.
Miraculously, 13-year-old Tori ultimately survives and recovers in the emergency room with life-threatening injuries.
It had rained really hard for several days before that, and I think that's the only thing that saved her life, because the ground was really soft and she was able to sink in, and so it did break her back. She had compression fractures. Sorry, it's really hard for me to talk about this, but I think that she would not have made it if the ground had not been soft like that.
Leading up to the devastating crash, the paranormal activity in the home became unbearably obvious.
Ben had seen what looked like the tail end of a Victorian gown going up the stairs, just the very tail end of it. Like he just caught it out of the corner of his eye. We had seen what looked like pipe smoke, like in the kitchen on the counter. Like there was nothing there, but it just like a little stream of smoke, and it looked like it was coming off like a cigarette or a pipe. So things, we had started seeing things and hearing things, and it was getting a lot more active. Bridger was getting more and more scared to sleep in his room. We were losing sleep. So this was all happening leading up to the day of the wreck. And then we started seeing things out of the corner of our eye. We saw what looked like the outline of a shadowy figure in the window upstairs. That happened the same day as the wreck. So that was something that did happen. I don't think the house caused the wreck. I think we were just under so much stress and so sleep deprived, and just our whole, home life was just out of whack. I just think that, maybe it made me a little more jumpy, and, I think that could have played into the wreck, but I don't think that an entity caused the wreck. Nothing jumped out in front of me or, took the wheel or anything like that. I just think it was just the pure exhaustion for being in that house.
After spending time in the ICU and a total of 10 days in the hospital, Tori is finally released to go home. Months later, after seeing progression in her daughter's health, Jaimie reaches out to the paranormal group to schedule a time they could visit the house.
We kind of pushed back them coming to investigate until Tori was healed a little more.
The Central Arkansas Society for Paranormal Research would soon arrive for their investigation at the Shea house. The group is led by Karen Schillings, along with psychic medium Angela Lowe, her husband Alan Lowe, and daughter Violet, who also possesses the gift to communicate with spirits. Upon entering the home, the psychics Angela and Violet would quickly notice a shift in the energy. When Violet approached Bridger's bedroom, she immediately felt surrounded by several negative spirits.
think she used the word like a sea of people. I don't know. I remember it was whatever she said. She made it sound like it was like a crowd of people. That was in Bridger's room where she experienced that, and that was where he would report that he was like, I can't sleep. I'm hearing all this talking, and we would ask what kind of talking. He was like, I can't understand. Everybody's talking over each other. So that would make sense that it was multiple, because it would be a lot of noise from a lot of different spirits.
Jaimie would reveal important information to help the team understand the history of the property.
One of my teachers from my high school was part of the historical society, and so I asked her questions about it because I knew that she knew a lot about the history, and she verified that it was the original stagecoach stop and was like a speakeasy type place, and then it was also the county jail at one point. I mean, so I got all of this from someone that was a member of the historical society.
The group decided to use a spirit board in an attempt to contact whatever was haunting the home.
They were asking the Ouija board questions. They asked if the spirit that was in the house had a name, and it did spell out S-E-T-H, Seth. So when they started asking the Ouija board questions, they started asking when the spirit was alive, and the spirit responded on the Ouija board, never. And this was after we had already figured out that the name of the spirit was Seth. They asked what the name was, and he said Seth. And they asked when it was alive, and it said never. Then after that is the very next question was, have we seen you, or can we see you? And then the Ouija board started going in a figure 8, and then ended up going to the camera and pointing at the camera. So I guess they were like, you can see me on this camera.
Immediately after the planchette turned to the camera, Alan Lowe, the technical specialist of the group, notices something chilling on his viewing monitor.
So after the Ouija board and the planchette went and pointed at the camera, they reviewed the footage, and this was very similar to what I saw when I was walking down the hallway. It looked like it was a figure that started forming from almost the ceiling. It was very tall. It wasn't, just a small little shadow. It looked like a head kind of formed, and then you could kind of see the shape of a human figure, but nothing was defined. It was kind of transparent, and it lingered for a minute. It would kind of form and then kind of start to disappear a little bit and then kind of come back. So this happened for, several seconds, and then it was gone.
Jaimie fears that the group may have unleashed something even darker into their home after using the Ouija board.
It never felt so bad, and before the Ouija board, I feel like after that, for the next few hours, it was very scary in there. I mean, the whole house turned like ice cold. It felt just evil. It just felt horrible. We were freaked out a lot, but we never felt that like pressing, like malicious feeling until after the investigation.
Using a Native American tradition, Angela and Violet burned sage to bless the house.
So after they did the Ouija board, that they immediately did the cleansing, and that did help, just the sage. And it was, I mean, I felt confident that what they did was going to help us. So Casper, some of the members, especially the mediums, said that it was one of the most active, if not the most active presence as far as spirits in the house that they had ever encountered on any of their investigations. And so, I mean, that's tough to hear when you're living in that house and you're told that there are not just one spirit, but multiple spirits in the house, ranging from completely harmless to possibly malicious. That would be Violet. She said that she sensed at least a dozen, maybe more, spirits in the house.
Despite their efforts to cleanse the house of any negative energy, the activity only continued.
I feel like after we tried doing the cleansing and having the investigation, and they did what they could to help us. At that point, we're just kind of at the end of our rope, messing with our nerves and our sleep and our moods, and being able to just come home and feel like this is our sanctuary. We never really got that in that house. After Bridger was in the trance and the stuff with the dog, I just feel like we were just done, and we started looking for a way to be able to leave that house.
Ben and Jaimie ultimately decided to put the house up for rent while they traveled out of state for work.
It wasn't long after that we left to go out of state and just decided to rent out the house. So we left as soon as we could.
In 2007, multiple articles were published online, which detailed the horrific events that took place in the Shea home. New Dominion Pictures, a production company based out of Virginia, would find the story online and contacted Jaimie regarding the possibility of turning her family's experiences into a documentary.
I just received a phone call from a producer from the show A Haunting, and she introduced herself and said that she had found our story that was posted by Casper after the investigation. She said it sounded like something they might want to do a show about, and asked if we'd be willing to do interviews, set up interviews. So she asked a series of questions. I feel like the first phone call lasted pretty long, and then she scheduled another one to ask more in-depth questions. And so it was like a 2 phone call interview, and then they scheduled someone to come to the house to actually shoot the interview with us on camera.
In January of 2007, a film crew was sent out to shoot interviews with Jaimie and Ben.
So they came, and it was just Ben and I. They didn't talk to Tori or Bridger, or Jackson was too little, but they didn't talk to any of the kids. So they probably took 3 or 4 hours for Ben and I both individually. So it was a full day, maybe an 8 to 10 hour interview day.
The episode, titled Where Evil Lurks, would be released on Discovery Channel in September of 2007. Although the documentary boasts an 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb, Jaimie revealed that the show left out important details and embellished some of their experiences.
It was up to the point where Casper comes in, where they start to get a little shady with it. When I was driving the kids home, nothing went out in front of the car. It was just the barrel in the road, and I was trying to dodge it. So there was no phantom looking Ghost of Christmas Past looking figure that ran in front of the car or anything like that. I was so mad when I first saw it. I was like, why would they change our real stories? They were so much better.
The Sheas would make multiple attempts to return and live in the house, hoping the activity would stop after being away for months. But this, unfortunately, wasn't the case.
One time we were just playing cards. It was just the family. It wasn't in the middle of the night. This was like maybe 6 or 7 o'clock at night. We were all in the kitchen, and it was back when you used to burn CDs, so you'd burn like different tracks, on a CD. So we were listening to a burnt CD. The player jumped to track 99, just like jumped to track 99, and over again on repeat, it kept saying, you need to help, you need to help, you need to help, you need to help, over and over again. Yeah. And that, it makes me sick to my stomach to even think about it. It really freaked me out. And so then we went and tried to find it. Like, was there any song that had those lyrics in it anywhere on that CD? And there wasn't.
That night, the family gathered what they could out of the house and left for good. As of 2025, Jaimie has become co-host of the podcast, The Unexplained Archives, which she runs with close friend Jennifer Gentner.
Robbie Mannheim allegedly became possessed by something very, very dark.
Every week, the duo dives deep into popular and lesser-known paranormal stories and strives to shed light on various supernatural conspiracies.
So we've talked a little bit about my haunted house in Arkansas. It was featured on a haunting on the Discovery Channel. And I actually got to interview with Austin Kraska, and he has the Ghost Files on YouTube. He's a documentarian, and I got to interview with him and tell my real story, which was awesome. And he was a great guy. And what's really exciting is he's our guest today. So I'm super excited about that.
Definitely, this house was the most active paranormal experience that I've ever been through. It did make me realize that outside stressors like that can really take a toll on your health. I feel like it affected my family, and that was the most important to me, was to get out of that situation so that we could all have a sanctuary to go to and not a place that caused more stress. This kind of stuff does happen.